If you feel like you understand the basics of improvisation, but can't really get a scale to sound that musical, this is the video for you. Today, I'm gonna cover an approach that will help you to overcome this incredibly common plateau so that you can start coming up with solos that sound richer and a little more professional. All right, so at a basic level, you should know a minimum of one scale shape and understand that you can use the notes in that scale shape to play around with and create a solo over a song or track. Most commonly, this would be either a simple major scale shape like this one, or a pentatonic scale shape like this one. If you're coming from a previous video of mine, you might also be familiar with my favorite shape, which is a major minor scale that is based on position 1 of the minor pentatonic. It looks like this. The idea behind improvisation is that by shifting any one of these shapes into the key of the song you're playing over, you can use any of the notes in any of these scales to solo with. Now, the very first thing we need to do is choose our signature scale shape. A lot of players waste their time searching around the internet trying to find some new shape that will somehow unlock everything and make their solos sound better. This is not the way to better improvisation. We want to choose just one shape and master everything it has to offer before we worry about other shapes, since all they do is add more ways to play the same notes. Now, the shape you choose is completely up to you. That's why it's your signature scale shape. Maybe you want to stick to nothing but that tiny major scale shape I started with. Maybe you want to go with the basic minor pentatonic or major pentatonic shape. It can be whichever one you feel the most comfortable with. Since I'm a little more advanced, I'm going to go with a combo shape. It's that major minor scale shape I like to call the home base, but I'm also going to add a diagonal pentatonic on top as well, just so I can have some extra options. So here's the major minor shape. And the diagonal pentatonic runs right through it. Feel free to steal this and use it for yourself or move forward with something more simple. It's totally up to you. Now, the next thing we want to do is iron our signature shape deep into our mind. So let's imagine our goal is to draw a shape with a pencil and paper while blindfolded. We're going to start off by looking down at what we're doing and tracing that shape over and over, so many times that the shape begins to imprint itself into our muscle memory. Eventually, we would be able to close our eyes and envision the shape in our mind as our hand did all the work. This is exactly what we want to happen with our scale shape. We want to play it forwards, backwards, faster, slower, start and stop at different points, change directions, use different rhythmic patterns, and repeat notes, all while our mind is partially occupied by something else. So to start, you're gonna need to pay complete attention to the shape and everything you do with it, but the goal is to slowly disengage. Start by just looking away from your fretting hand as you play up and down the shape. Once you get that down, try turning on the TV or a YouTube video to watch while you continue to play the scale. Then you can start adding random patterns and direction changes as you feel comfortable. Overall speed is not important at all. It's just about training your fingers to go where you want them to without even thinking about it. And you want to get to a point where the shape has become so imprinted that you can focus on something else entirely and continue to trace the shape on the fretboard like I'm doing right now. It doesn't need to be as fast or fluid as this, but this is the long-term goal. Now, before we get into the application portion of this lesson, I think it's important to emphasize just how important it is to slow down. Almost every player I see getting stuck with their improvisation is trying to play way too fast. Speed almost never makes a melody sound better unless it's executed flawlessly. That blazing fast Stevie Ray Vaughan lick that you learned is definitely cool, but we're gonna hold on to that for when the rest of our skills have caught up and we're actually ready to use it. Take things slow and you'll see a much quicker improvement in your improvisation skills. All right, so now we're all set up and it's time for some proper application. Now, there are a million different approaches to improvising, and every seasoned player uses their own unique mix of techniques to improvise with. What we're gonna do here is start using one of these techniques, and all that's gonna entail is playing up and down the scale while emphasizing notes. So if you listen to me improvise a few phrases, you can see that I'm not treating all the notes as equals. I'll play notes from the scale and then land on a note I want to emphasize. Playing it for a little longer is really all it takes, but I'll usually pick it a little harder and maybe add some vibrato or movement as well. Now, I'm gonna have you creating phrases like these. And we'll start by doing this in the most simple way. So each line or phrase can be started at any point in your signature scale shape. So choose any random note you want. We're then going to start traveling up or down the scale shape with a target note in mind. And that note can also be any note you want. Once we get to that note, we'll emphasize it by picking a little harder and just letting it ring out. So let's say we want to start on this note and end on this note. We would just do this. And I like to add a little vibrato, and we can do this starting and ending at any point we want. It doesn't matter how many notes long our phrase is at this point. And we're just gonna keep doing this, creating a whole bunch of these little phrases, all starting and stopping at different points in the scale. Once you've become comfortable with that, we can make a little tweak. Rather than only traveling up or down the notes in order before landing on our emphasis note, we'll try skipping one or two notes here or there, or even changing directions. So let's say I wanna start on this note here, and I wanna land my emphasis note right there. Well, what I can do is I can go past it, so I can go here, 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 past it, and then come back down onto my emphasis note. So like this. Right? Or I could even travel further past. I could go. Just like that. And then I can also try skipping a note. So let's say we want to do something similar. We want to start here. We want to end here. Well, as I'm climbing up now, I'm going to skip. Right? I skipped that note on the way up, but came back down and landed on it. And you could do that skipping as many notes as you wanted. From here, you can essentially create endless little phrases by making small changes to where you change directions, which notes you choose to skip, and which note in the scale you choose to emphasize at the end of each phrase. Now, once you've got the hang of this method, you can group a bunch of these phrases together to create an entire solo. You can even extend your phrases so there are multiple emphasis notes per phrase. And through repetition of this method, and as your signature scale shape becomes even more imprinted, you'll be able to create these phrases on the fly without even having to think about it. Here's a quick example along to a track. Quick plug, I do have a full-length soloing course that covers all this and so much more in depth. It's called Soloing Made Simple, and if you want to learn more about it, you'll find a link down in the description. Now, up until this point, all of this probably feels very random. And when you're first learning how to create these phrases, I think that's okay. Since your scale shape is in the key of whichever song you're playing over, all the notes are going to sound pretty good no matter what you choose. But there is something you can do to elevate this process and give your phrases more meaning. This is through something called chord tones. Chord tones are the specific notes inside each chord you're playing over. So rather than playing any random note from the key, you would play one of the more specific notes in each particular chord. And this becomes really powerful when you use a chord tone as your emphasis note in your phrase. Now, learning to use chord tones kind of requires its own dedicated video. So from here, I'd suggest you go watch my lesson all about chord tones. I'll put a link to that up in the middle of the screen for you. And for those of you that are Patreon members, I'll see you over there for our weekly follow-up practice tips lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.